3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Projection Booth and the Culture Cast. It's a special crossover episode. I'm your host, Mike White. Joining me, of course, is the host of the Culture Cast, Mr. Chris Dascio.
I prefer to be known as Chris Muad'Dib. And you shall now be known as Us.
I am the strength at the base of the pillar.
You always stroke the base.
Don't forget the balls.
Don't forget them.
We are back talking about Denis Villeneuve's Dune. Dune, Part 2.
I see strength in you. And now you need a war name.
It's time.
I am Paul Atreides, Duke of Arrakis! That is a powerful name. Dune.
Is there a better name for this, or is it just Dune Part 2? Is that what we're calling this?
I mean, I think, obviously, given that the narrative of the piece is a continuation of the last movie, not really a sequel, I think Part 2 makes sense.
Yeah. Chris, what did you think of Dune Part 2?
I actually enjoyed it a lot more than I enjoyed the first one.
Yeah.
I felt that while there were things in it that are, again, I think just a product of what the narrative is, I think that it still has its problems. I'm not a big fan of Timothée Chalamet's energy and what he brings to most things I've seen him in. He's just, I don't know, I got about halfway through Wonka and I was like, this is so fucking twee. And then he brings that energy all the time. And I think for me, this might be the best I've seen him personally, because in terms of Paul, I actually find the Paul character to be better executed in this movie than in anything else I've seen other than the TV show. But that never counted. That doesn't count now because it's a TV show, but because you're given plenty of time to do it, more time than these movies got. But I enjoyed it more. I think that the additions to the cast kind of amount to very little, if anything at all, other than Austin Butler. I'm not surprised to see that it looks like Christopher Walken and Florence Pugh were on set one day, maybe. I don't know. It's very weird. Some of the stuff is weird. And I mean, again, if you are to take a step back and look at David Lynch's Dune, which I know you and I both have in the last 2 years since this movie came out, we've recorded commentaries. And I mean,
right after I saw this movie, I watched Dune 1, I watched Dune 2, I came home, I watched the Spice Diver edit.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, the Spice Diver edit, the original version of the movie, has its own problems, and this movie somewhat falls into similar traps just based on the way the narrative is executed. But I actually think that this movie does a better job at finishing the story of the first book than I was expecting it to, given how poorly it executed the first half of the story. And I'm actually interested to see if they do make a third movie, because the narrative where it's left is more interesting than where the Lynch one leaves it. The Lynch one kind of leaves it, blue sky on Mars a little bit right at the end, which, I mean, that ending of the David Lynch always reminds me of Total Recall, because it has that and we changed everything and now it's all good. And as two people who enjoy the book, that is not how the book ends. Not even close. And this ends closer to the way the book ends.
Closer, but yeah.
I mean, I'm talking more about I'm talking more about the broad narrative strokes of, we're not left with the character of Paul at the end being like, oh, he's a babyface, white meat good guy, and there's no complexity to his character. And I'm not saying that's the case with Kyle MacLachlan, but here there is a focus put on the internal struggle of Paul, which I do appreciate, because that's part of the narrative. That is what makes the way the narrative is told so important. And I appreciate that Villeneuve and John Spates brought that to this, but look, it's 3 hours. That's a long time. And the last movie is 3 hours. So it's 6 hours of epic as fuck Dune, made to look epic and executed epically. And it's going to resonate with a lot of people. And for the spectacle of it, I enjoyed it. For what it is in terms of Dune, it does not fire on all cylinders. But if we're talking about this solely as an epic piece of filmmaking, I think it checks all the boxes. But in terms of it being a good adaptation of Dune, that is a lot more subjective. Objectively, it's a well-made, nice-to-look-at film that looks like everything else Denis Villeneuve has made, which is to say it's well shot because he knows what he's doing. What about you, Mr. Mike White?
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed this one a lot more than the first movie as well. I don't know why. Was it just because there's no Duncan Idaho in this one? I don't think so.
Wait, you didn't like Jason Momoa? My boy.
He was fine. He was fine. And it was nice to see Gurney again. I rewatching the first one, I was just like, man, Dr. Yui got such a raw deal. That guy's barely in the movie. And there's really just not a whole lot of explanation of the Imperial conditioning and how Piter broke it and all these things. I mean, Piter is barely in that movie as well. I'll tell you who else is barely in this movie, Aaliyah. It is remarkable to me. So I over last weekend, I interviewed Max Avery, who wrote the Masterpiece of Disarray, the book about the David Lynch Dune.
Right.
And he was like, oh, well, there's that whole fast forwarding moment in Dune, the David Lynch Dune, where it's like in the 2 standard years that followed, blah, 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 blah. And they just fast forward through the narrative. And he was like, oh, they do the same thing in Dune Part 2. And I was like, actually, they don't. Because this whole movie takes place over a 9-month or less period of time, because Jessica's pregnant at the beginning and she's still pregnant at the end. We never get to see Aaliyah. I just kept wondering, how the hell are they going to do Aaliyah? Are they going to do a little girl? Are they going to do some sort of bizarro CG creature like that awful baby in those Twilight movies? Like, what were they going to do with Aaliyah? Well, we'll solve the problem by just not doing anything with her. We'll show her in the womb and we'll show Anna Taylor-Joy in a dream. That's it. So it is odd that Aaliyah of the Knife does not show up in this movie. There's some weird changes, and there's some that I like a lot. I'm really glad that Gurney Halleck finally gets his revenge against the Beast Raban, but then that battle, quote unquote, is so anticlimactic. I'm just like, it's almost better that he didn't, that it was just strange.
Yeah, the thing with Aaliyah, obviously before the movie came out, there was a lot of talk of who is Anya Taylor-Joy playing, and she's she's not even credited on top of everything else. I mean, she's literally uncredited. And in a lot of ways, this movie reminds me of after reading Jurassic Park. This is how I felt about rewatching Spielberg's Jurassic Park, which is, this is fine for what it is in terms of being a big, loud, entertaining movie that is well made by someone who understands how to shoot a film well and understands how to make a film well. And Steven Spielberg is at the top of that. I think Denis Villeneuve is as well. But yeah, the fucking problem with Dune is the Dune stakes are really hard to convey. And this movie, I think, does a semi-decent job at conveying the stakes towards the end, with the great houses showing up and nuking them in space and all. I mean, all of the things that we don't really see in the original movie. We understand the stakes here. But to your point, because one of the characters who is such a big part of this, who will be part of the next movie, assumingly they make a next movie, the Dune, it won't even be Dune Part 2 or Part 3. It'll be Dune Messiah. Like, I don't even know how they could call it Dune Part 3. I guess they could. But that's the thing. It's like you leave one of the biggest characters out to tease another movie, I guess, is what it ends up kind of feeling like. It's like, well, if you like Anya Taylor-Joy, and if this movie makes money, she's going to be in the next movie. And she may even take the place of Timothée Chalamet. He may not even be in the next movie. They may jump it forward and ahead in time far enough where he's played by somebody else, theoretically. I don't know if they would do that, given that he is the quantity that he is. I mean, given what he brings to the franchise as a whole, because he's pretty much the face of it. I mean, him and Zendaya are. But yeah, to leave the character of Aaliyah out, to give one of the main characters' deaths to Paul Atreides. By the way, spoilers. I'm assuming I assumed that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sorry. Spoilers, everybody.
I mean, we haven't really spoiled anything yet other than Anya Taylor-Joy, who, again, she said everybody knew she was going to be in the
Oh, yeah. We saw her on the red carpet. Yeah.
So it wasn't
if you weren't looking at Zendaya in the robot dress, you were looking at Anya Taylor-Joy. So
yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. It's like, I was similarly to yourself, just waiting for her to show up. And yeah, I think that's one of the biggest fumbles is her character not being in the movie, but them cutting to her in the womb a lot, which it's an interesting choice. I don't know how well it works. But yeah, for me, the things that work are the introspective scenes about Paul grappling with what this means to be part of a formula that you have no business writing. I mean, you're a cog in the machine. You are one small cog in this giant machine, to the point where we see, Lea Seydoux and Austin Butler and Charlotte Rampling. Like, there's a lot of Bene Gesserit stuff in this movie that's not in the original movie. It's obviously in the book, but again, if there's not another movie, it serves no goddamn purpose. Mm-hmm. And I know there's going to be a TV show, supposedly, on HBO Max, but a lot of the stuff that happens in the movie, just it feels like to me they should have done both movies back to back. And in doing that, it would have allowed them to deal with some of the problems, which is, it feels like they're retroactively filling in the problems of the first movie's backstory in the second movie. And that comes from not having it well thought out at the start, which is why I am surprised that they didn't do this like a Peter Jackson and Lord of the Rings, where all of it is created at once. There's no universe where the last movie is a good movie if it's the only one that exists, because it literally doesn't tell an entire fucking story.
To your point, I really do appreciate that they went in so hard on, basically, Jessica is the villain of the piece, I think.
Yeah, pretty much.
She's the one who realizes, oh, there are all of these believers in the South. I'm going to go to the South and I'm going to talk to them and basically build up the base for Paul being the Messiah here. Or actually, I don't even think she doesn't even think that Paul is the Messiah. She says at one point that she's going to give birth to the Kwisatz Haderach, and that is Aaliyah's character. So she's just kind of setting the way for Paul to gain all of this power, and then she thinks that she's going to usurp that with Aaliyah, and who she has this, complete psychic bond with. They're literally two brains in the same body. I kind of appreciate that. I like that. And I don't know how much I like that Stilgar becomes a true believer and that he is always looking for signs. I kind of like the way that they played it in the Lynch version, where it's just like, and he shall know your ways as if born to them. Like, those kind of things are like, again, it is the legend, those kind of things. But with this, it's like, see what he did? Oh, he knows everything before it happened. See, he's the Messiah. He's Makti. He's the one. He's Lisan al-Gaib. I mean, take a drink every time Stilgar says Lisan al-Gaib, and you're going to be flat out within the first hour.
Right.
But I do like this idea of like the different factions of Fremen, and that the Northerners are a little more skeptical and the Southerners are a bunch of yokels. So it's like, I can kind of see some metaphors going on here.
Yeah, and what's also interesting is, like you mentioned, with Rebecca Ferguson's character kind of being the villain of the piece, almost all of the characters that are not given a lot in the original film are given a lot here. Like, multiple scenes that take 5 to 10 minutes. I mean, in a lot of ways, you could even make the case that the second half of the movie is Austin Butler's, because he is the focus. Once he shows up, there's not a whole lot of scenes left in the movie that don't have him at least sulking in the outskirts and or just murdering people outright, which that's the thing. I think for me, Fade Rautha is a really interesting character that seems a little one note, because he could have been given his own movie the way that they're portraying him here. And he doesn't seem able to overcome the prophecy that they keep talking about. It's like, he has nothing to do with it, but maybe he does. And is that in the book? I don't even remember that in the book.
Yeah. There are basically 3 people that could have been the Kwisatz Haderach. At least at that point in the Dune story. One of them is Paul, of course. One of them is Fade Rautha. And the third one is missing from this movie, and that's Count Fenring, who I guess was going to be played by Tim Blake Nelson.
Right. And was talking about being cut out of the movie. He was cut out of the movie. They filmed his scene.
Yes. So see you later, Ben Affleck.
Right.
But yeah, I would have loved to have seen that. The way that he talks in the books, I thought that Jeff Goldblum would have been a perfect Count Fenring, because he has that whole stutter thing that he does. Right. I'm like, that'd be perfect. Why not cast him? But I guess he's too busy planning on the next Thor movie.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We haven't really talked about other than Austin Butler, like the people that show up in this movie that are cast in the bigger roles. Why is Chris Walken in this movie again?
Because he was in that video for Fatboy Slim, which has the line, walk without rhythm and you won't attract the worm. So
right.
This is a whole big in joke that is happening here. Yeah.
Kind of feels like it. It kind of feels like it. If you want me to be honest with you, I was wondering if that was going to be your answer, because that would have been the answer I would have given. It's like, is this like a Fatboy Slim thing that they're just trying to be funny about? Like,
yeah, that's what it feels like. It feels like this is a meme come to life. This feels like, you know, I'm the juggernaut, bitch. But it's like, oh, see, here he is. He should, well, he could have been played by anybody. Walken is always great. But he barely has a presence here. And I really kind of wish that he had more of a presence. I think it's really smart the way that they introduce him in the Lynch movie right up front, and which I think is how it is in the book.
Right. Well, it gives you the understanding of what the stakes are. I mean, look, he's not even in the last movie. The Emperor is not in the last movie. Princess Erlon is not in the last movie. Fade Ralph is not in the last movie. The Beast Reborn is in the last movie. The Beast Reborn's barely in this movie.
Yeah, he just goes nuts all the time.
Yeah, good for Dave Bautista getting a check from this movie, but man, like the amount of sidelining that his character has taken, and understandably so, given the way that the narrative they're having it play out here goes. But yeah, I mean, even in a lot of respects, Stellan Skarsgård gets sidelined, who, for me, probably the best part of the first movie is Stellan Skarsgård. And now it's like we mentioned, you know, the character of, you know, the Paul's mother ends up being the villain. So yeah, of course he's not going to have as big of a part, right? Because he's not the villain. She is.
Yeah, they still kind of drop the ball when it comes to the Fremen guerrilla activity. Like, we get to see, I think, 2 Spice Harvester explosions and attacks, which is okay. Now, we only have, I think, 1 in the Lynch one. But then, am I misremembering? Is the second Spice Harvester actually Gurney Halleck and the...
Yes.
Okay. So we really don't have 2.
Well, we see one being like blown up from like a wide shot, but we're not like on the ground with them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing about Austin Butler, I mean, I kind of like his scenes. I kind of like this whole shooting in infrared film. So everything is super stark, black and white. I like that effect that they're doing. I guess that's what life is like on Giedi Prime, and those bizarro like ink blot explosions, the fireworks. Yeah. I kind of like that. And I really kind of like that whole scene. But at the same time, he's basically doing a Stellan Skarsgård impersonation, which is weird. Like, his voice is just, there are times when one will speak to the other and it sounds like the same person is speaking.
And I was watching a video, was it last week, about Austin Butler talking about that, and apparently he really got a rise out of Stellan Skarsgård, who was like, how can you do my voice? How are you doing this? I mean, it is a weird choice. I will say it's mildly amusing that I think if he had been given a little bit more time on screen, you could say that Fade Ralph in this movie is a really great villain for cinema. Like, he has a great look. He's portrayed by a great actor. I think what he does when given the opportunity, just like fucking killing people with wanted abandon, that's an interesting character trait, because again, like, it makes you understand and realize where this guy is coming from, but there's just not enough of him. And it is a lot of non-verbal acting that he's doing. It's a lot of physical presence, not verbal. And yeah, when he opens his mouth, it does just sound like Stellan Skarsgård. It's impressive, but fucking bizarre at the same time. Like, he's doing a almost perfect, like, younger Stellan Skarsgård. But yeah, you can't do that in the scene with the guy if you're standing with your back to the camera. That's not how that works. You know, I guess we'll wait for this movie to come out on physical media so we can watch the subtitled version to know who is talking. Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully they do the italics for the person whose mouth you don't see moving, kind of thing. or recognize the character. Yeah, the whole thing with Fade Routha is very interesting because in I'm sorry to keep saying in the book, but in the book, there's this whole thing about him in the gladiatorial arena. I think he's killing his 1,000th person that night. And there's this whole thing about how every person that goes into that gladiatorial arena has been pre-programmed. So if he says a word to them, and I can't remember what the word is, but when he says a word to them, their muscles tense up or they suddenly relax, or I can't remember which one it is, but that's basically like his safety valve so that if anybody is winning, he can just say that word and then use that moment of hesitation to murder them. And he also has this whole thing of like the blade, the thing that we've seen on Sting's girdle. Like that is a thing as well. And there's just all these like plans within plans of how he wants to get the slave master or the gladiatorial guy like murdered and or pin all this stuff on him. And yeah, it's just, this whole like political back and forth between him and his uncle. And we don't really get any of that stuff other than, that one Atreides slave wasn't drugged. And then the uncle, the Baron Harkonnen is like, oh, well, now you look like a hero because everybody knows that slave wasn't drugged. So you look like you're a really tough guy. And it's like, oh, okay. But really his story doesn't go anywhere. And what's really bizarre to me is having recently seen Blade Runner 2049, the scene where he gets his knives, the guy comes in and gives him his knives and he takes it and he just yanks two of these slave girls or whatever they are, harem girls around him. And I'm like, this is exactly what Jared Leto does to the one replicant that he has because he's like, oh, she's not perfect. She can't have babies or whatever. So he just straight up kills her. And I'm like, this is almost the exact same scene. It's very bizarre.
Yeah, I couldn't help but think about Blade Runner 2049 a lot while watching the first Dune and then this movie. Look, I love Dune a lot. I love the book. I love the original movie. These movies are fine. I think Blade Runner 2049 is a better sci-fi movie than these two Dune movies, which is kind of weird to say, but I think I've also gained a larger appreciation of Blade Runner 2049 in the last year and a half since you and I did the episode on your show for it. I really like that movie a lot. I like it more than the original Blade Runner, probably. I think it goes more interesting directions. I mean, look, Rutger Hauer's not in it, so that's the big problem. But the 2049 has a very good performance by Ryan Gosling. And that's the thing. I mean, Villeneuve in these sci-fi movies, he knows how to get good performances out of his actors. I just think that the issue in Dune is it's a little bit too late. The thing with Austin Butler and Fade Routha feels like a little too much too late. You're introducing him in the third act of your movie. He should have been a looming threat and presence from the start. These movies have suffered from being two movies. And I know as well as you do that in the next however long, year, 2 years, there will be a cut of this movie online where somebody rearranges the movie best they can to better suit the original narrative. Here's the thing. Half of the fucking scenes that they need aren't in either of these movies because they didn't include them because they streamlined the narrative down, which is fine. Again, that's the issue with Dune. Dune is such a broad narrative that asks a lot of the people enjoying it, both the physical copies of the book, the audiobooks, or, I mean, really the source material. It asks a lot of you as a reader. It asks you to be an active, engaged reader because it's a high-concept sci-fi world. This movie, I don't think really captures part of it. In this movie, again, it still kind of feels boring. Like, it kind of makes all of this feel very... Is it wrong to say it makes it feel very barren? Like, it feels like Earth in a lot of ways. Like, this feels like a very earthly conflict, and it doesn't feel like a conflict of the stars. And I'm not saying it needs to be Star Wars, and I know people will say that Dune was copied to make Star Wars, which, I mean, if you're talking about Joseph Campbell, then yes, everything copies Joseph Campbell, not just Star Wars copying Dune. Dune is working off of the same tenets that Joseph Campbell came up with. So, yeah, they're very similar. But I think that, if anything, these movies suffer from not being one movie more than I think the first movie suffers more now with the second movie coming out of them not just being one singular.
Well, and had they shot the two movies back to back, maybe we would have had Stephen McKinley through the whole thing, because the thing I didn't say about that stuff with Fade Routha is that at one point, Fade is like, oh, well, Thufir Hawat was the one who came up with this plan. And then later on, Baron Harkonnen's like, oh, I think that Thufir Hawat was probably behind this. And then we have the whole thing of Thufir and how he gets, taken over by the Harkonnens and just this whole thing. Of course, there's no heart plugs in the book, right? But, this whole thing of like, do you need my life, old friend? And gives Thufir the blade. And Thufir actually has like a spike that's in his hand that he's going to kill Paul with, but he ends up just letting himself die rather than betray the House Atreides. You also get that whole thing too, and I'm kind of glad that they cut it out, because Thufir thought in the book that Lady Jessica was behind the death of Duke Leto, and then also Gurney Halleck thinks that Jessica's behind the death of Duke Leto as well. And so you have this whole scene in the book of like him holding a knife to her back, and then Paul talking about like, you haven't heard my mother crying at night and all this stuff. Jessica and Paul, I know Paul says at one point, where my feelings, I feel nothing. But he has like the visions of like the skull of his father and the painting of Duke Leto and everything. But Jessica doesn't really seem to talk about him very much at all. And she just seems much more driven, like I'm saying, as far as like, oh, we have this opportunity. I'm going to exploit this legend and bring my son to power and basically thrust him into this role, whether he likes it or not. But yeah, I think the idea of being back to back, but then again, I guess you just like 5 months into it, you're like, oh yeah, Chris Walken, can you fly over here to wherever we're shooting this thing and become part of this? Because yeah, just to have that non-integration of some of these characters is a little strange, even if you just introduce them briefly up front. And frankly, I wouldn't have minded seeing Austin Butler in one of those big cod pieces with the wings and everything.
Yeah, for as much as people were kind of extolling how great the production design of the original movie looked, they didn't really do a whole lot more here. They kind of just were like, you saw it once, we're going to do it again. I'm not saying Dune needs to be fantastical, but I think it does. And I think Jodorowsky's Dune, I think that the Dune miniseries are both very good examples of Dune done in a way that is interesting to look at. Look, this movie is shot like a Roger Deakins movie, for fuck's sake. And it's not a Roger Deakins movie. It's not. It's shot by the guy who shot the last Dune movie as well. So it all feels of a piece, but it all feels very epic. And it's trying to convey its epicness through the visuals and not as much through what the characters are doing. And look, that scene between Austin Butler and Timothée Chalamet at the end of the film where they're fighting, well lit, looks great, not compelling. Because there's nothing compelling about these two characters meeting for the first time and fighting and dying immediately. And look, I know that's the way it is in the book, and I know that's the way it is in the original movie. And in a lot of ways, my gripe here, my complaint here could be leveled against the original movie. That, yes, Fade Routha just is there and dies. But in the original movie, Fade Routha is just there, and then he just dies. So that's fine. You haven't invested in him, so it doesn't matter that you're killing him in a lot of ways. He's just a device for the plot to function through. In this movie, you give half of the third act to Austin Butler, and then he just, boop, is dead. Just the way he dies in the last one. And the fight is maybe 2 minutes longer than the original movie. It's still just as protracted. It's still just as, okay, like, he's actually just going to kill him right here, right now. Again, like, if you don't know the narrative, it might seem interesting. And that's the thing. Like, I wish one of the people we could have on this episode with us would be somebody who has never read the book and has not seen the Lynch movie. Because I feel like this movie's entertaining for the person who hasn't seen those things. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm just saying, look, realistically, people like Jurassic Park, but people that like the Jurassic Park book may not like the Jurassic Park movie because it's not the same. It's much more mature adult book. It spends half the time talking about compies eating, amino acids or whatever, the lysine contingency. Like that. I mean, that's like one line in the movie. That's a whole thing. There's a whole lead up to and you don't even know it's dinosaurs to begin with in the book. Like the first third of the book is like, is this a dinosaur book or what is this? And that's the thing here. When you look at Dune, they don't explain what's going on in the first movie because they don't know there's going to be a second movie. So now it's like, oh, well, we can just retroactively explain things now. And it's like, yeah, I guess. But it it doesn't really work that way. This is not a TV show. This is not the first and second episode of a miniseries. This is 2 movies. They should stand as 2 separate films.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm okay with the way that they handled that. I think just because I do like this one a lot more, and I'm okay with some of the departures. Like I said, having Lady Jessica be so much more invested in the idea of making him this. Also, that Johnny is like, you know what? Fuck you, man. If you're going to marry the princess, fuck you. And she just walks away. And there's none of this stuff. And I did notice, so many things like have changed over the years with gender roles and everything. Of course, we did the swap last time of Leah Kynes being a woman rather than a man, which I was absolutely fine with. But I think we also got rid of Leah Kynes being Chani's parent.
Right.
And so there is that lack of echoing of the idea that both Chani and Paul lose their father. Even if she had lost her mother, that would have been something. But I think they just take that right out of there. So Paul's the only one that experiences that loss. He doesn't have that connection with Chani, which was kind of fascinating to me. And then, using Jessica as a villain rather than an ally. And she kind of drops out of the movie and out of the book, when it comes to her role. She just kind of disappears after a while. She's just there to basically be like, hey, cut Aaliyah some slack. And so, of course, we don't have Hera in this movie either. We don't have the Sons of Jamis either. That's okay. I'm all right with us, just trimming down the fat. We've already seen that it works okay to not have Hera and Jamis in the movie from the shorter version of Dune. And really the kids, I don't even think that the Sons of Jamis get one line in maybe either the books or the movie itself. Maybe they do in subsequent books. I don't know, but they just kind of are there. Like they just show up, oh, Paul's about to ride a sandworm and these 2 kids are there. Why is that? I don't know. Like if you don't know the book, if you don't know the cut scenes, then they're just like, oh, these 2 little kids hang out with them. All right, that's pretty cool. But yeah, I can see the changes that they made, and I respect almost all of them. I don't know if narratively, and I think that's what we're both hitting on, is narratively, did they tell the best story that they could in the order that they did? Did they bolster the right things and take emphasis away from the wrong things? Yeah, I don't know if they were truly successful in that, because to take us into this second Dune movie and introduce us, I mean, poor Lady Fenrig, she is just so wasted, other than to be like, oh, I'm going to fuck this guy and get pregnant by him so I can preserve this bloodline. That's her only purpose in this entire movie. And we don't even get to see the fucking, it's just like, well, I guess they fucked, because at some point she holds her hands over her stomach. It's like, oh, yeah, all set, and it's like, all right, I guess your only role is to be pregnant, but yeah, to introduce her, to introduce the princess, to introduce the emperor, to introduce Feyd-Rautha. It's like, all right, yeah, we are cramming a bunch of new characters in here that really don't have a whole lot to do. I mean, they're still trying to get something for Princess Irulan to do. So they give her the narration gig again, and she's keeping a diary, and we're finding out things from her. She basically is our voiceover in this one, but just still not enough stuff. So I liked a lot of the changes, but not all. And then just the way that they handled the actual pacing of stuff. It's like, yeah, they could do a better job.
Yeah. Well, we've talked a little bit about kind of the royal side of things. And I think it's also worth mentioning in terms of the Fremen characters, I actually think they do. I mean, other than Stilgar, which is a big problem, the way that they paint Stilgar in this movie. I actually like Zendaya in this movie. I think she's pretty good.
I like Zendaya, yes.
It's a big departure from her character in the book. But I think if you have one character who's like, okay, maybe not, because that is, I mean, in the movie, her character is literally like, I am not okay with this. You cannot solve everything. Only I can fix everything. And look, Paul knows that he's leaning into that intentionally, but at some point, you can't undo what's been done. And that is where the movie leaves us. And that's why she leaves at the end. And I like that is her character being given some agency here. She's not just, oh, I love Paul and that's it. No, she is firmly against Paul embracing the visions that he's having. And I find her to be immensely interesting as a character. And if they do make Dune Messiah, she's going to be like forefront in that entire movie. I mean, look, maybe they don't recast Timothée Chalamet. If they don't, that means they have to cast Zendaya back as well. So that would be a good thing. I think she might be the best part of this movie. She's really good. I think she's really well suited for this role, the way they've written it for her.
I do really like her, yes. And I like that she has more agency. The one thing that...
It's not really Chani, though. That's the problem. Like, she is very much a completely different character. Like that, I think we just have to note that, just so that everybody listening understands. We are aware she is a completely different character from the book. That singular reasoning makes her a completely different character.
The thing that I was so amazed, because I was re-listening to the book the other day, and the whole thing with Paul taking the water of life.
Right.
Like, I kind of like, after Jessica takes it, she almost looks like an addict. She's just like, you got to try this thing. This is amazing. She looks like she's freaking strung out. And in the book, the taking of the water of life for Paul kind of happens the way it does here, where he's just like, I got to take the water of life. And then boom, cut to Jessica being like, hey, Chani, I called you here. And I can't remember. She gives Chani some sort of like bullshit excuse. She's like, Chani, you got to get up to like this siege. And so Chani comes up. She's like, oh, I'm sorry. Got you here under false pretenses. But Paul, he took the water of life 3 weeks ago and he's in this coma. And only me with my Bene Gesserit training am able to determine that he's still alive. Otherwise, we would have sucked all the water out of this guy. And Chani figures out, she takes the water of life, puts it on her fingers, puts it on Paul's lips. He licks it or whatever, wakes up. Oh, okay, I've done all this. It's so, again, anticlimactic. And I know that they shot that. Lynch shot it almost like that originally, but then was like, this scene needs something else. So the whole thing of him going out to the desert and having all the worms show up and they're like almost paying homage to Muad'Dib and stuff. I'm like, yeah, that's what you deserve. Like, it needs something epic and it needs to cause ripples through the entire universe. Again, that line of, there's a place inside of women terrifying to us that we cannot look at, this whole thing of like, and look in that place and you'll see me staring back. I'm saying like that is gone as well. I'm like, yeah, all right. Again, it's that man-woman thing where we're changing it, and I'm absolutely fine with that. But I'm like, this should have been a bigger deal when Paul takes the water of life rather than him just laying there, puts little drops on his mouth, and he's just like, okay, yeah, I'm good now. And it's like they don't even give the impression that he's been out for like 3 weeks.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing about Dune. And again, I just, again, it's ironic that Javier Bardem is in this movie because I think Dune in a lot of ways is similar to No Country for Old Men. It works as a book because on the book in terms of Dune, you have no budget. On the page in terms of No Country for Old Men, you don't have to have somebody narrating the character's internal monologue. It is done for you because the author wrote it. You don't have to wonder what the character's thinking. They're fucking telling you a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. And No Country for Old Men, the movie suffers from that because the Coens didn't do the thing they should have done, which is have some interior monologues of the characters. And in Dune, it's not that Dune's boring, but Frank Herbert doesn't get bogged down in the shit of people, like of the action of it all. It's not like, and then Paul took his knife and swung it, and then somebody else swung it. There's not a lot of that in the book. The book is more about this world and what's been going on and all these people pulling and pushing and grabbing and groping and for like the littlest piece of everything. And that is why, for me, the Dune board game from the 80s is a good representation of the fucking universe of Dune, because it's about 4 to 5 houses all competing for one thing that is so valuable, your entire house can become the wealthiest house in the universe because of this one thing, because this one thing is so useful. And do you realize they're mining spice in this movie? Because it gets pretty much, the spice gets sidelined in this movie. It's weird. Like, again, like it feels like Dune, it looks like Dune, but the things that they leave out and the things they just kind of gloss over, some of that is what makes Dune Dune.
Well, the thing that is also missing from this movie that I was very surprised about, no guildsmen. There's nothing to do with the guild. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the guild.
How do they get around? How do you get around fucking that's my point. Why is the spice important if not guild navigators who literally are using it and they transform their bodies through using spice? Doesn't matter. Their ships just show up. Like, okay. Yeah. And like, look, I get that in Lynch's Dune, they don't explain this giant fucking monster in a water tank. They don't explain it. They kind of say, well, they say later on what the deal is. But I mean, I would rather have it and it not explained than not have it at all and try to figure out why spice is so fucking important.
Right. Well, in the guild navigators, well, first off, in the first movie, they're like, oh, wow, it's really expensive to travel.
Yeah, they're like, how many
space.
Solaris did it take to get here? Like, why are you asking this question if this ultimately doesn't matter?
Exactly. There's no talk about that when it comes to like the satellites and all of this stuff and how many ships show up. And it's guild navigators that send back all the ships of the great houses. The whole Landsrad is out there waiting, as opposed to this movie where it's just like, oh, all those guys are still up there. All right, well, fuck them. We're going to go jump in our ships and battle them. And I'm like, well, that seems really out of line. Like, I don't recall a lot of space battles in these movies, but all right. Okay, sure. If you're going to do that. But yeah, it feels like we're missing a major component. We've got the Bene Gesserit, but we don't have the guildsmen. And to me, like those two, it's like this. I know the spice definitely plays a role when it comes to the Bene Gesserits and their power and everything, but of course it majorly plays a role for the guildsmen. It changes their whole body, changes everything. And like, they wear contacts so that their eyes don't have that same blue within blue that the Fremen have, It's like, yeah, we're missing that. I would really like to know more of the power structure of what's going on here. But, that's a nitpick, like, because the story doesn't necessarily need it, and it does ultimately change how the end of the movie is. Okay, we're going in a different direction. So I'm not mad about that. I'm not butthurt by the changes that they're doing. Some of them I'm just like, that was an odd choice. And others I'm just like, okay, yeah, we trim the narrative. It works well. Or like I said, we give Gurney his due. He finally gets to kill the Beast Raban. Beast Raban, for all intents and purposes, disappears from the second half of the Dune book. It's like, you get those shots even in Lynch's movie where it's like Paul Smith walking up a dune and looking really angry. And, that whole like, who is this Muad'Dib? But that's about it. The whole thing, like how they don't know who Muad'Dib is, like they figure that out pretty early in this one. There's no like, oh, Paul is Muad'Dib. Like we find that pretty early on in this one.
Yeah. I mean, look, as much as I enjoy the acting talents of Dave Bautista, which I do, I'm not joking. Yeah. I think Dave Bautista is a great actor. You wouldn't know it if you watched this movie. And even the last one. I mean, that's the thing. I went back and rewatched the first one. And yeah, in a lot of ways, all it does is it sets him up to be a threat, and then he's not a threat in this movie. And it's like, why did you even set it up in the first movie? Because we didn't really see it pay off. We never really saw him do a lot in the last movie. We got to see Fade Routha do more in one scene or two scenes in this movie than Beast Raban ever really gets to do. More or less in this movie, the Beast Raban fails over and over and over. And that's the reason Fade Routha's brought in. That's the reason he ends up being in the position that he's in at the end of the movie, because he is no longer being trusted to keep order on Arrakis. But again, at least Gurney Halleck gets to kill him. That's the thing. Speaking of No Country for Old Men, you got the two leads from that movie in here with Josh Brolin and Javier Bardem, who are really good in their respective roles as two of the kind of warring father figures for Paul in the second and third act of the movie. I mean, look, what else can we say about Javier Bardem other than he's one of the great actors working right now? Everything he's in is better for him being in it, and he always shows up in everything that I've seen him in. And look, Anton Chigurh was a really great role for a really great actor who had already been doing a lot of good things, just a lot of Americans hadn't seen it. That's the thing. I mean, everybody, Javier Bardem, yeah, he's amazing, and that's why he's in this. And same with Josh Brolin. Like, my God, just give him a couple lines of dialogue and he chews through that shit like crazy. He is, I don't know, he brings that like gruffness. It's a little bit of cowboy energy, but it's needed here because I don't know, I love Josh Brolin, and I think he's better suited playing these kinds of roles at this point in his career, because not a little goes a long way, but Thanos is kind of like the career-making role for Josh Brolin, I feel like. Like, that first Avengers movie is really good because of how good he is, the performance that he turns in. So at this point, like, he's similar for me to Robert Downey Jr. Like, he can do no wrong because he, like, showed up for one of the biggest movies of all time. So, yeah, needless to say, the supporting characters are given a fair amount of time in this movie, and every actor, for the most part, that is one of those newer supporting characters or returning ones is given something to do, other than the ones that aren't, which is the problem. Like, the problem is, like, some are and some aren't, and the ones that aren't are given even less. You know, we always joke about Virginia Madsen in the original version of Dune has one line of dialogue, right? It's like, yes, father. Yeah, father. And then in the Spice Diver version and the other versions, it's, you know, she introduces the movie and she's, you know, in the known universe, blah, 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 all of that, which is really great. And it's kind of, you know, it's so kind of comes out of nowhere. It's, you know, you get that shot and it's just her staring at the camera. Like, it's so weird, so David Lynch. Why is Florence Pugh in this movie? Like, that's the thing. Like, some of the characters that do show up are great, but the ones that don't are so bad. It's like, why is Florence Pugh in an extended cameo in this movie? Why is Chris Walken in an extended cameo in this movie? Like, they are not given enough, or if they were given enough, it did not end up in the finished product.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm okay, kind of jumping subjects a little bit, but I think I'm okay with the riding of the worms in this one. You don't really get to see the worms when they're riding them. Right. But at least it's better than that so cheesy shot of McLaughlin going up the side of the worm. That's like, I saw Dune recently in the theaters and I laughed out loud when I saw that shot. It's still just so cheesy. But I mean, I love that movie, so I forgive it that, but I think it's okay the way that they handle the worms in this one. I think I just would have liked to have seen more of them when they're on top of the worms, and especially, like, how do you get off of those things?
Well, if the popcorn buckets from AMC are any indication, there are plenty of ways to get off with sandworms, if you know what I mean. Yeah, that's the thing about the sandworms that I can't unsee now. Anytime I see them in the movie, is I just think of this, like, giant unintentional sexual device, like, and or the worst conceived popcorn bucket. Because even if it doesn't look like a fleshlight, did anybody try it out and pull popcorn out of that bucket that had butter on it through those tendrils? Because at what point are you just like, now I need to wear, like, gloves, or I need chopsticks to get the popcorn out? Like, because it's impractical. And similarly to getting off the worms, we never see how it happens. So it might be just as impractical. There's like a giant ladder that they pull up to, and it's just like they get off and climb down. Is that what it is? A giant pile of sand, probably?
Yeah. They're like, pull up next to that dune. I want to jump off.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I know how sharp the teeth of the maker is, so I don't know why you would stick your arm into that hole. I mean, it feels like the only thing that could be inside of that popcorn bucket is pain.
Right. It's like it is like the height of capitalist idiot bullshit, the most boring dystopia, that now we in the West have co-opted something that was very popular in Japanese theme parks, especially Disney theme parks, which was themed popcorn buckets. Now our movie theaters are doing it, but they never asked if they could and should. They just did. And look, I have a Ghostface popcorn bucket from AMC that my folks got me that's sitting in our living room. It's a cool little thing because it's like a Ghostface head, and you pop the top open, you put popcorn in it. Practical. A thing that is impractical that looks like a giant pussy, it's gonna get laughed at, and it's like it's the best and worst kind of publicity, because, like, again, like I said, with the worms in the movie, that's all I can see now. But at the same time, at least you move the needle. I mean, I'm sure, I don't know if anyone went and saw this movie because, lol, a popcorn bucket looks like a fleshlight, but you might have gotten some people to be a little bit more interested in Dune otherwise. I will say, yeah, the sandworms are, like, uninteresting. It's like a very, again, like, that's the thing, like, all of this feels very just blah. Still, like, the design of everything just doesn't feel fun. It's so gray. Like, it feels, you know, if I didn't know this was a Denis Villeneuve movie, I would have told you it was a Chris Nolan movie. Like, really. Like, it feels like that. You know what I mean? And if you know Chris Nolan's style, it just, there's something that's removed here that I don't know what it is. A sense of fun? Like, sense of this could be entertaining.
Well, it's not a Chris Nolan movie because it's a pretty straight ahead linear narrative. And other than the Batman movies, I don't know if he knows how to tell a straight ahead linear narrative.
Well, if he had adapted Dune, he might have just done like Batman and just done it linearly, maybe. I don't know. I mean, that's the thing. I feel like Denis Villeneuve, like all of his movies feel of a piece. And that's good because I like what he brings to things. I just don't think what he brings to Dune is the right thing. That's the thing. Like, I don't know, like his idea of what Dune is and my idea and your idea and Frank Herbert's idea, I feel like he's further in cinematic Dune territory than he is the book Dune. And the book Dune, I mean, look, yes, we can keep saying it over and over again. The book is a lot more interesting because it's a complex narrative. I have seen plenty of films that are complex narratives too. That's not fair. Movies can be just as complex. Why are people still talking about Stanley Kubrick's films all this time later? It's not because there's not a lot to chew on. It's because there's more than enough to the point of people wrapping themselves in conspiracy theories that, you know, The Shining's about the moon landing. And that's the thing. I'm not saying Dune needed to be that, but Dune needed to be a thing where people could actually look at it for what it is, which is a very bizarre story about what happens when power goes to someone's head. And I don't know if Denis Villeneuve is necessarily super engaged with that idea. It doesn't seem like to me he is, which again, like with Jurassic Park, like with other movies, you can take the idea and do your own thing with it. I mean, in a lot of ways, one of my favorite movies, something we covered on the projection booth so many years ago, was Annihilation, which the book of Annihilation is like not even the same thing. It's not even the same. It's so not even the same thing. I've read the book twice and I'm not sure I understand it. I get the movie. The movie has a lot going on. It's an Alex Garland movie. But for me, that's more what I'm getting at. I like when someone takes the idea of something and does something with it that makes sense and doesn't devalue the franchise or the IP, but takes it and does something interesting with it. This just kind of turns it into a very straightforward story. This movie, not as much as the last one. I mean, again, they have those questions of Paul and whether or not he's going to embrace the power, but then he just kind of does, and that's it. And it's like, and then he does. And so he knows he's a Harkonnen, so he's going to be a Harkonnen. The end. And it's like, whoa, you made that decision in the span of one scene? Like, okay.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like there's a temptation. You know, it feels like he needs to be tempted and then give in to the temptation and then revel in the temptation.
Right, because Dune Messiah is a story about how Paul is not, in fact, a good guy. He is, in fact, not able to control what he started. And in this narrative, you would be led to believe he had no interest in ever starting it to begin with. And in the book, that's also not the case. He's written differently in the book. He doesn't necessarily bristle at the idea of being given infinite power. This, it's like, I don't like the idea. Like, why? It's like, man, I also don't like that because you have to, like, you understand why. Stop asking why. You might not like it, but you understand why they're doing this because there's always going to be a pull and push in the universe for power. And I mean, they get it. Princess Erlon gets it. She goes, you know, if you do this, it'll look like, you know, the other houses will realize you did this. So you have to make sure that you don't look like the person who killed the Atreides because then they won't trust you either. That's smart writing for that character. Why it's so few and far between is kind of a shock.
You know who else is missing from this movie that I just remembered, and I'm kind of glad that he is? Leto, the son of Paul and Chani, because he's in the book, but you barely even, I don't even know if he's actually in a scene in the book, but they talk about him being down in the South and he's being protected down there. They want to keep him away from Paul Muad'Dib so that he doesn't get injured, and then he eventually gets killed, and that's kind of a motivating factor a little bit for Paul, but not nearly as much as it should be for me. So it's like, I'm kind of glad you're not there. Also, this whole thing of like, once they find Gurney and he's got all of his smuggler friends, there's the whole question of, well, do we kill the smuggler friends? Oh, some of these smuggler friends joined you recently? Sounds like they might be Sardaukar. And they have a whole face-off against the Sardaukar guys, and they eventually, I think they let 2 or 3 of them live, and then they release them, and they're the ones that run in and tell, you know, the Harkonnens and the Emperor that Paul is coming and that Paul is Muad'Dib.
Yeah,
I'm okay. Again, with these changes, I'm okay, because Leto the baby was basically just now it's personal type of moment. Right. For me, the now it's personal for this one is when the Beast Raban destroys the one Sietch and the water is destroyed. I'm like, oh, that's the big deal to me. I'm like shocked that the water was polluted and that all the rocks and everything fell into it. So I was like, oh, that's terrible. But nobody seems to care. Like, they do have a scene where they go in and it seems like there's like refugees and stuff. And I'm just like, oh, this kind of reminds me a little bit of Palestine right now. But I'm sure that was just a coincidence. But just to see somebody's homes being destroyed, the Harkonnens coming in there and like even torching the birds that live inside of the sietch and everything. It's like they're leaving no one alive.
Yeah, I'm okay with the things that they left out too. Like I don't know. I mean, one of the things that kind of, I don't know if we mentioned it the first time we talked about the first movie, but this is the second time we're talking about the first movie now, and you mentioned the Thufir Hawat character. Do they ever even say Mentat in these movies?
That's right. Yeah, I don't think they say the juice of Safu at all. I mean, it's only if you're paying attention, you see that Piter and Thufir both have that little tattoo. I mean, they don't have big bushy eyebrows that we had in the previous movie. There's no real mention of Beni Thylax or whatever, the home planet of the Mentat. Again, like you're saying, the whole Frank Herbert originally was basing all of this stuff off of the Middle East and oil and the Russians, obviously Vladimir Harkonnen, like there's all of this history that he's building upon and basically casting it out into space. It feels like Villeneuve is taking all that stuff from space and putting it back here on Earth, because it doesn't feel like these things are taking place on another planet. It feels like they're taking place in another country, and they just have to travel to this country of Arrakis, in order to fuck shit up.
And look, I think that's been the issue with Dune as a storytelling device. The planet throughout these adaptations, the scale is never made clear. And you could level the same thing against Star Wars. Coruscant is a city planet. It is one giant city as a planet. We only spend 1 micrometer of time in 1 micrometer of an area in Coruscant in those movies. Similarly to Dune, Stilgar is just the leader of the sietch that Paul ran into. There could have been because again, the Fremen, after this movie and in the narrative, they go and take over the fucking universe. That's literally what happened. So there can't just be these like little group of assholes. And that's the thing, like that's what all of these things have really deprived the narrative of, which is even as grand as this narrative is, it's not as grand as the actual there should be establishing shots like Star Wars where we and like even Star Wars struggles to convey how grand and insane the movies are. And Phantom Menace gets a lot leveled against it because it's a big CGI, monstrosity, and there's a lot of problems with it. But in a lot of ways, it helps expand the universe of Star Wars in a way that nothing else ever had, which is showing us that there's these really big, extravagant places. Because in the original Star Wars, it was just a lot of matte paintings and small stuff. And look, they abused the CGI in the prequels a lot. But at the same time, there was a level of like, they're traveling around the universe doing this. And there's just none of that here. It seems like small groups of people. It's not that big of a deal. Yes, right at the end, we understand that the houses are part of this, but the conflict doesn't feel like something that in the next movie they're going to go, and then he took over the universe. Mm-hmm. Like, really? Okay. And look, here's the thing. Kudos to Villeneuve for showing something in these movies that, again, feels like an anachronism that has no place. They have nukes.
Right. Watching the movie, they do attack the Harkonnens at least 3 times, and including like a blowing up of the whole refinery, which really sets Raban off. So they are doing a little bit more damage, but it still doesn't feel like, and again, this is all taking place over 9 months, unless Atreides women take a lot longer to gestate their pregnancies.
Yeah, the conflict feels so truncated, and this is 2 movies. You're spending 6 hours talking about this, and it still feels kind of truncated. Yeah, I don't know. Look, I don't know if anyone could ever make Dune feel grand unless you do it as a TV show. I mean, that's the thing. Game of Thrones would not have worked as a movie. Why? Because when they started jumping the shark in that show, not to spoil the show, but to spoil a thing that people had an issue with, towards the end of that show, they were literally teleporting across the world that took weeks, months, and years to travel sometimes. I mean, part of the narrative of Game of Thrones is an army crossing a sea to come and attack the, essentially Middle Earth in Game of Thrones. And in this, it should have been the same thing. I mean, look, this is a conquest of the planet that they get to Arrakeen at the end, and it's like, this is where the big conflict happens. This movie doesn't treat it that way, and neither does Lynch's movie for that matter. Like, none of these movies do a very good job at conveying the scale of what the conflict of Dune is. That's because I genuinely think if this had been a TV miniseries, like 3 or 4 seasons even, because I think you could break the book up into like 2 or 3 seasons of TV easily.
Oh, yeah.
Easily. You could have the first season end with the Duke dying, with Duke Leto dying. And shit, that's a lot of castle intrigue. And if people don't know that Dr. Huey is a turncoat, that could be the cliffhanger of one of the episodes. Like, this shit writes itself. No, instead, we're just going to rush and make a movie. And here's what I don't get. You're telling me if Denis Villeneuve was like, I want to make a TV show of Dune, they wouldn't back a fucking truck up to his house?
Mm-hmm.
I that's what I don't understand. I mean, we saw what they did with The Lord of the Rings, and the people who are directing Lord of the Rings were not Denis Villeneuve level of directors. They're much more just like people who work in TV and people who are used to working on high-end TV shows. If you're worried about the budget, this would have been a bigger deal if it had been a TV show. I genuinely feel like. And I think that the upscale version of the TV show, where it's like a Game of Thrones level TV show where they are shelling out the big bucks for the CGI effects, would have been a better version of this, because this narrative needs time to breathe. That's why Dune is one book, and then there are how many other books? Oh, I don't know, like 1 million is my point. and everybody who's a big fan of Dune will say, well, Frank Herbert's books are the books, and Brian Herbert's stuff is kind of, take it as you will. That's fair, but I mean, if you like Dune enough to continue reading, that must mean you see some value in the original narrative and how it's going to be recontextualized or furthered in other things. And this just doesn't feel as interesting or as grandiose, or that Paul will turn into a worm at some point. Like, none of that feels like a thing that's going to be a thing here, because this just seems way too grounded in reality to be Dune.
Yeah, good place to end it.
The weirding way. They don't even say it, do they?
I don't think they say the weirding way. No.
And that's fucking part of this.
Mm-hmm.
What the fuck, Dune? It's like making a Star Wars movie and never pulling out a lightsaber. Oh, wait, you can do that. But not if you're telling the story about Jedis, you can't. And that's the problem. If you're telling a story about Jedis, lightsabers are expected. If you're telling a story about the character of Paul, you need to use the word mentats. You need to say Harkonnens correctly. Like, you have to talk about the weirding way. Like, you have to talk about those things because those are part and parcel to the narrative, and they're not here. And look, call me a nitpicker, call me a hater, whatever the fuck you want to call me, it's fine. I enjoyed these movies for the movie versions that they're trying to be, but in terms of them being good adaptations of Frank Herbert's source material, they are not that. And that's the thing. I genuinely wonder if people who watch these movies are even going to look at the books, if they would go pick up the books, or would they just go, I'm good with this and this must be good. And that's what I wonder. I don't think that this would make me go out and read the books, because I think if I read the books, I'd be like, this isn't the movie that I liked and watched. It's so different. Oh, okay.
And I would not be surprised if there was a podcast in 1984, if the host of that would be saying the exact same thing about Lynch's movie. Like, what the fuck is it with these weirding modules? That's not how the weirding wave works. And you don't use sound to attack these people. But I love it. I love what he did. And I love that they gave them this technology in order to do it. And it just made a lot of sense. I do have to wonder if there is a nod to Lynch in Villeneuve's film, which is when they take the Baron's body out to the desert and just leave it there, and you get that weird shot of Stellan Skarsgård out on the desert, and you see all of the ants crawling around him, and the ants go into his ear. It's so reminding me of Blue Velvet.
Yeah. I've got to assume that's what that was. I was wondering if there was going to be some Lynchian moment to pay homage to a movie that I think I'm assuming Denis Villeneuve likes that movie, or maybe sees a value in remaking it. But yeah, that would be my assumption as well. If not, like, what are you referencing? Please tell me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was odd to just throw him out into the desert like that. I did like that after he gets incapacitated, the Baron that is, that he starts to crawl for the throne. I was like, oh, that's pretty great. He's still so hungry for power that he's crawling up to get to the throne. I kind of wish that it had been like almost a John Wick 4 type of thing of him constantly crawling up there and then getting thrown back down and crawling back up again. But that didn't happen.
We needed a truncated finale to this 7-hour series, you know? That's the thing, like the final conflict should have been more than 5 minutes because you spent all this time telling us how important this is going to be. And then it just kind of ends, just like a lot of the things in this movie. Like, you know what? Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings leaves out a lot of stuff. I know people want to talk about Tom Bombadil being left out. Tom Bombadil wouldn't have added anything to the story the way Peter Jackson told it. And that's the thing. The way Peter Jackson and Philippa Boyens and Fran Walsh interpreted Lord of the Rings through their lens is much more interesting to me personally than the way Denis Villeneuve adapted and interpreted Dune through his lens. And that's all. And that's really all I can say more is like, if this is for you, cool. I get why it is. For me, it is not. The David Lynch one is because I appreciate the way he interpreted Dune through his lens of David Lynch more than Denis Villeneuve's lens.
You know, Chris, there was no Scourge of the Shire in that Return of the Kings, and that's really a shame. I wanted to see Sharky taking care of the Shire.
That's the Bad Boys 2, ending of Lord of the Rings is where it's like, oh, there's another 100 pages you got to deal with, where Saruman the White is now he escaped and he's in the Shire and maybe if you're a big fan of the character Saruman, it disappoints you how he dies in the movies, but like you got Chris Lee in that role. I think he kills it. That's the thing. Like that character is in that movie a perfect amount and he's used perfectly. And there were plenty of those kinds of characters here. Like a Fade Raban is a secondary villain the way Saruman is to Sauron, kind of a waste. Austin Butler, not as much of a waste, but also kind of a waste because at the same time he wasn't in the last movie. If he had been in the last movie, be like, well, damn, he had a fully fleshed out character as opposed to just every time he's on screen, he has to kill somebody, which I get is kind of neat, but it also feels like somebody just like dialing the multiplier up on like how crazy this character just has to immediately be because we don't get a moment with him where he's not just like snarling, growling, and looking weird, which again, he looks great, but it's just not a lot to him. And that's for me, it's just there's a lot to see here, but there's not a lot of substance behind.
We good to wrap?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, cool. Yeah, I'm trying to think of how to start. Paul gets stabbed in the side by Fade Rautha. It's stabbed here. And then later on, it feels like the knife is up by his chest. And I'm just like, what happened? How did that happen?
Well,
did you see that at all, or is that just me?
And they were getting to the end of the day shooting, and they just wanted to be done. And look, if you show somebody something shiny and bright, they won't worry about plot holes or where the knives move to. I did notice that, though.
Okay. I'm glad it wasn't just me.
No, it was not just you. John Spates wasn't doing a very good job in keeping that timeline in order. John Spates, who kind of shocked, he is like after The Mummy, he's
written some horrible things.
Yeah. And look, you know what? To talk about another sci-fi thing that I actually think has aged rather well in the years since it came out, Prometheus is actually not as bad of a movie as I remember feeling it was when it first came out. And I think that's primarily due to the thing that came out afterwards. Made it look like a fucking, like a Van Gogh comparatively. But that's the thing. Like, I actually think Dune 2, Chapter 2, does not undervalue the last movie. I don't think it overvalues it. I think it's just about the same. But the thing that really soured me on this movie is just everything that they introduced feels so like they don't give any of it enough time. And so they're introducing a lot of stuff and they're just kind of yada-yadaing it. And it's like, fine, that's fine. But for me, I need this to be a complete thing. And if there's a part 3, maybe it will be, but maybe this added things that it really didn't know how to add. And it didn't land those additional things that it it added, look, the original didn't either, but there are multiple versions of the original. So maybe that's where this lies. Maybe when this comes out on Blu-ray and 4K, maybe once Dune Messiah comes out, if it does, someone will take all three or these two and cut them and turn them into something else. There was not, if I remember correctly, an extended cut of the last movie. There may have been deleted scenes on the Blu-ray, but there was never an extended version of this like there was with Lord of the Rings. So it's not like they shot all the things we're talking about. They made a choice to leave them out. And so if they never shot it, there's nothing to edit together. It's more just chronologically adding things in. But then at the same time, if you do that with these two movies, you'll have Austin Butler in the first hour of the first movie, and then in the first hour of the second movie, which is like 3 hours later. So it's like, wait a second, maybe it doesn't really matter. So yeah, I'm glad we got to talk about this. This was actually not a movie I was going to go out and see because the last movie just wasn't my jam, but I'm glad I enjoyed it more. That's for sure.
Yeah. I don't see myself sitting down and watching these very often. I imagine Andrea will occasionally throw them on like she does, and I'll just kind of watch them, and really I'll think about the Lynch movie and just think about how much I like that. And again, not entirely faithful to the book, but I love the ride that it takes me on. I'm not advocating slavish devotion to any source material. I think that some of Villeneuve's choices in here really made things better, and I liked what he was doing with a lot of this. It still felt uneven, and I don't know if the cure would have been to do a Hobbit to this and break it into 3 pieces, because you have enough story for this. You wouldn't have to go to the Silmarillion or anything to take pieces from that and try to shove it into Dune. It wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. There's enough material to give you a 9-hour version without much hesitation. Like you said, this would have made a fantastic TV series. Even just like one episode, season 2, season 3, day in the life of a Siege, and just what life is like when you wake up in the morning, and just the care for the water and all of these things, all the rituals that you have to go through. That would have been a fascinating thing to just follow some nobody Fremen and all of the shit that they have to go through in a day.
When one of the most interesting characters in your entire film franchise, as it is so far, 1 and 2, is the guy who tends to the water in the first movie in the capital of Arakeen, and he's a more interesting character than Fade Raban is. Yeah, you've kind of failed and missed the point, which is the world of Dune is what's interesting. And the characters can be interesting in the focus, but the world is rich and full of things that are beyond comprehension. And that's Frank Herbert for you. And while I think we would both agree we can appreciate someone else interpreting it, at the end of the day, I might just advocate to go read the goddamn book with this one. Because, the book is that good. It is that expansive. It does kind of feel like a fully fleshed out thing that you can wrap your arms around in its entirety and understand. And like you said, the movies aren't that, but they could never be that. Unless they did it in a way that makes it where, like you said, I understand. Day in the life of a Harkonnen, even on ED Prime, they do take advantage of it, but that's the thing. It's like, I want more. I want the world to be bigger and broader. I want to sit with Sam and Frodo and watch them throw Bilbo a birthday party. Yes, it matters to the plot of the story, but it also matters in establishing the world and the rules and the connections between the characters in the Shire. And there's more in the first movie than there is here. But that's a problem because it feels like they just ignored it in the second movie. It's like, well, if you're going to introduce all these characters, you need to do more of that. Give this movie another 30 minutes is what I'm saying. Maybe that's a bad thing. I don't know if it would have fixed it, but I think you and I are both kind of more on the fence on this one than we were on the last one in terms of enjoyment. So it might have teetered me more into this is one I would enjoy if those things that were added were better executed.
Exactly. Yeah, I definitely like this one more. I wasn't checking my watch while I was watching this. It didn't feel like the slog that the first one feels like. But yeah, like I said, I don't see myself running out to watch this one again anytime soon.
Me either.
Well, Chris, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun talking about Dune Part 2 with you. And when you're not talking about Dune Part 2, what are you up to these days?
Talking about movies because, hey, I like watching movies and not being able to enjoy them anymore. Don't you? It's the struggle of doing this. Yeah, everything that I do and talk about in terms of audio can be found over weirdingwaymedia.com, which, yes, is named for a thing from Dune. So if you don't realize how much we love Dune, it's right there in the name. That's all I'm saying. What about you, Mike?
Same thing. Everything that I do is available at weirdingwaymedia.com, including this podcast. And we should probably make sure to plug, since this is both a Projection Booth Culture Cast crossover, that we both have on our Patreons. At the $10 and up level, you can listen to us and our dear friend Richard Haddam talking about James Bond movies every single month. First of the month comes, boom, new episode talking about James Bond. We're going to be doing that for a lot of months because there's a lot of James Bond out there, and maybe by the time we finish, there will be a new James Bond. Who knows? So, and you know us, we are going deep with this stuff. We are, only the strong travel this deep, as Paul Moadib once said.